Welcome everyone to Nightcast Season 1, Episode 1. Jay Miller here alongside of my co-host Amy Kane, and we're so excited about presenting our latest segment of Night Football, our very own Nightcast. Now every week we're going to drop a new segment all season long, and it'll be posted on all of our social media accounts on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. And be sure that you subscribe, you like, you hit heart, whatever, so that you don't miss a thing. Now, many of you know me, Pastor Jay. I've been here a long time, broadcaster of KnightVisionTV, president of Lafayette Christian Academy. Last season, someone approached me about doing something called Nightcast. Gave me their vision about it, and that person happens to be our co-host today, Amy Kane. She's a veteran of Lafayette sports. She's done some broadcasting, sports broadcasting in California, here in Louisiana, primarily in New Orleans, but now she is officially a Knight. Amy, welcome to Nightcast.
And that would be a cougar. Now working with the Knights, I'm a graduate of STM, and here I am sitting next to you, Professor X.
Hey, anytime we can pull one over, yeah, we like that.
I hear you. But yes, after years of working with KATC, of course, being out in California, covering sports for many, many years, it's fun to be doing this and talking about easily one of my favorite subjects, and that, of course, is high school football. We're going to have a lot of fun this season, and certainly all the reasons behind why we will is what we're about to show you just from week one. This is a team that, no doubt about it, is going to be exciting. They've already met the preseason expectations of what we saw in game one, and I can tell you, Knight football finally here, and week one, opening it up against six-time state champion, perennial powerhouse, the Acadiana Wrecking Rams. Let's go to the highlights from week one.
First quarter, first possession, Juwan Johnson finds Brennan Walker over the middle for 38 yards, and Knights take an early 7-0 lead. In the next possession, Juwan Johnson finds Jalen Noel through the air from 8 yards, and the Knights retake the lead 14-12. Juwan Johnson did it through the air on the first two scores. Now Juwan will do it with his feet from 7 yards out. And now we are all tied up at 20. Next possession, Juwan Johnson. Oh, let me stop right there, Amy. You got to check this out.
I think this might have been one of my favorite moments in the game. I mean, that is class. That is sportsmanship. That is why he is.
Juwan Johnson scores and finds, and this is the Acadiana high side of the field, if you will.
Exactly.
And he just finds a little guy down there, shakes his hand, and is like, "What's up, my brother?" And on to his business. And so on the very next possession, Juwan Johnson flushed out of the pocket, scrambles for 18 yards, and the Knights retake a 27-20 lead. And Amy, from this point on, they would never look back. On the ensuing possession, LCA Knights worked the old tip drill to perfection. Chris Hilaire tips it, and Ty Lee makes the grab. And it only got exciting from there. On the very next play, Juwan Johnson to Braden Allen all the way down to the 1 yard line. On the very next play, Juwan Johnson walks it in from there, and the Knights extend their 34-26 lead going into the half.
All right, let's take it into the second half when literally the fireworks start. The Knights defer on the coin flip in the first half. They get the ball to start the third quarter. On the first play, Juwan, 78 yards. He's going to the house. The party at this point is on. The Knights extend the lead to 40-26 in the third. After a Ram TD, Juwan is going to find senior receiver Trey Grogan for 80 yards. Jay, this is Trey's first catch of the game. And he takes it to the house, 80 yards out, Knights up 47-26. And on the very next LCA possession, Juwan finds Trey Grogan again, this time for another 80-yard touchdown. That's 2 catches, 2 TDs, 160 receiving yards for Trey Grogan.
My goodness.
Late in the fourth, Juwan hands it off to Jalen Noel. Jalen is going to find pay dirt once again. He goes 54 yards to the house. That brings us to the final score. LCA wins 61-38. And for the first-year head coach, Hunter Landry, the old Gatorade bath, celebrating his first win as head coach of the LCA Knights.
Well, Knights go to 1-0 on the season with the win over Acadiana High. Knights are currently ranked number 4 overall in the state, according to Max Preps, number 1 by Sportsline in 4A. And tomorrow night, they head to Baton Rouge to take on the Woodlawn Panthers. KnightVisionTV will be in the house, where we will be broadcasting live from the Red Stick, Baton Rouge. Now, Amy, let me give you some of the viewership stats from week 1. Now, I know last week, Acadiana High, perennial powerhouse. And between LCA and Acadiana High, there were 10 state football championships represented. So this was a much interested game for everyone in Acadiana. And so I was looking this past week on our stat line for our viewership. And on Facebook alone, just shy of 6,000 viewers. That's 6,000 different individuals or accounts on Facebook. And if you go to YouTube, about 2.8. So you do the math, and that was just shy of 9,000 viewers that watched that much anticipated game between LCA Knights and the Acadiana Wrecking Rams.
Well, and not surprising. I mean, you are talking about two powerhouse teams. You had two 5-stars that were going up against one another. The Rams, of course, bringing their great defensive end McKinley to the table. Jawan playing for LCA, so a lot of interest there. But I think that after this performance and what you saw from LCA, those numbers are only going to continue to grow as interest is going to grow. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit of what the possible accomplishment could be for Jawan that puts him on a major watch for any sports fan in the state of Louisiana. But right now, I want to talk about what happened after the game. Now, Reagan Miller was our sideline reporter last Friday night, and he was able to catch up, of course, with a few key players after the game, starting with Jawan Johnson.
Here with quarterback Jawan Johnson. Congrats on the big win tonight.
What
would you say were some of the key to the successes for the offense tonight, putting up over 60 points against a good Acadiana High football team?
Definitely. It starts with the offensive line always. It starts with them. If those guys don't block, we can't do nothing on the back end. So starting with them, they did a great job blocking a 5-star, actually a 5-star. Then they have number 3, Harris, a linebacker. He's a great player. Mm-hmm. So it started with those guys, and then just Coach Hunter having a great game plan, the great things to know what to hit the defense at. That was one of our things. Yeah.
Going into week 2, what is on your mind? What is the goal? What's the goal going into week 2? How do y'all stay level-headed? Coming off of such a big win, I know we have Westgate next week. Woodlawn next week. But going into week 2, what's the motto? How do y'all keep your head small and not get too big against a big Acadiana win?
Right. Our Coach Hunter always he says there's a roller coaster in football. Sometimes we're going to have our highs, sometimes we're going to have our lows, but we have to know just how to stay level, stay on that path to where we could just be right all the time and not get too high-headed or too low emotions, right? Yeah. So, yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Juwan.
Appreciate it.
All right, let's talk about his stat line from week 1. Passing 14 for 24, 365 yards, 4 TDs, and with his legs, 11 carries, 135 yards, 4 touchdowns. I tell you what, he is easily on the trajectory to be possibly the best high school quarterback in the history of the state of Louisiana. And you got a message over the weekend that just confirmed what we already knew.
I did. I was sitting at my house and getting ready to tune in to LSU, put a romping on FSU, which didn't happen nonetheless. Yeah. And I got a text from one of our statisticians here and sent me this text, and it was the Louisiana High School career total offensive yards leaders. And it's set by Brock Berlin of Evangel Christian Academy.
Yeah, the great Brock Berlin, what was that, 25, 30 years ago?
25, 30 years ago. And he was at 13,659 yards. Now, it's through the air or with his feet. And so the statistician texted me and said, Juwan Johnson sits at 9,727 yards after last Friday night's game. And so I did the math. He's 3,933 yards away from setting a new record that's been held for over 25 years in the state of Louisiana. And here's what's interesting. In the last 2 games alone, so it's game 1 at Acadiana High, and then the last year's state championship game against STM. In those 2 games alone, Juwan has accumulated right at 2,000 yards and 16 touchdowns, and he's got potentially, with playoffs, 12 games to go to catch basically 4,000 yards and set the new Louisiana high school offensive total yardage by an individual.
Now,
amazing.
I want to point out he is responsible for 16 touchdowns against a state championship game and against one of the best 5A schools in the state of Louisiana. 16 touchdowns. Just let that sink in. 2,000 yards. He's only got almost 4,000 to go. I don't see how he doesn't do it.
If he stays healthy, and we keep seeing more of what we saw the last 2 outings, I think it's he's on a downhill freight train track to get it done.
And which is why my point that I made a few minutes ago is that the interest in LCA football and the interest in will Juwan do it, I mean, it was almost like when we were watching the McGuire-Sosa, were they going to break the 61 years ago? You know, I think we could be looking at that kind of interest that comes around very rarely in Louisiana high school football. So, of course, we're going to be talking a lot about Juwan and, of course, the other offensive stars. I mean, you have Grogan, you have Noel, but on the other side of the football, the defensive side, we saw them step up in the second half, and they really look to have found their groove as well. Reagan Miller was on the sideline with a couple of the defensive stars of the game. Let's take a look at what Ty Lee and Bryce George had to say.
I'm here with 2 of the captains of the defense, Mr. Ty Lee, Mr. Bryce George. Mr. Ty Lee, what was the message coming into it? You're one of the main vocal leaders of this team, especially on the defensive side of things. What was the message? What was the heart? What was the mantra coming into the game for a defense?
Just knowing that we were supposed to win this game, people thought we was going to win, so we just came out and understood that we can't just back down. They got momentum, they got motivation to come and beat us and take our spot, and just knowing that we just got to keep fighting and then just have faith.
Yep, there you go. Bryce, you came into this game last year compared to this year. You're a new man. And so with all the improvement over the summer, what was the key to the success? How does it feel to be able to make some of the biggest plays of the game? Some were saying you made the biggest hit of the game and of the season so far. So what does it feel like? What was the key to some of that success for you?
I mean, it feels good. You know, we all made plays, but just the work that we put in over the summer, seeing it pay off the first game, playing a good team, and just striving to be better every week.
Yes,
really.
Sir. All right, what's the message going into week 2 for the team? What's the focus?
Just keep it rolling.
Representing LCA and the name on our chest.
Thank you. Enjoy the
Now,
win.
the other big story for the game that was played at Acadiana was that it was the first win, and what a win to start your career as a head coach for Hunter Landry. We're going to talk a little bit more about his background and certainly why he steps into being a special coach for this program and what could turn out to be a very special year. But let's hear what he had to say after.
Here with Coach Hunter, new head coach. Congratulations on the win, Coach Hunter Landry. What would you say some key points to the victory tonight, over tonight's win?
Yeah, man. Tonight offensively, man, guys were just clicking at the right times. At times we had a little adversity, but our guys were resilient, kept fighting. Defense at times gave up a lot of points, but at times, they bend but didn't break. And it was a full team effort from 3-year, 4-year starters to incoming freshmen. It was a total team effort.
Yeah. Okay, coming into the game, we know what the crowd says. We know what the reporters say. What was the message inside the locker room leading up to the game tonight?
Right, yeah. It was, just one play at a time. Don't try to make this game any bigger than it needs to be. The fans did a good job of making this a huge game. Sure. But we just kept, it's one play at a time, man, one quarter at a time. Don't try to do anything other than what we're asking you to do. Just be you, and we'll be fine.
Thank you, Coach. Enjoy the win.
All right, Jay, so who do you give the game ball to? Do you give it to a player that is responsible for 8 touchdowns? Do you give it to Trey Grogan with, 2 80-yard touchdown runs? Then you've got Noel coming out of the backfield. The defense steps up in the second half. No, you don't give it to any of those people. You give it to the new head coach.
The dude that has poured so much into this program. Yes, sir. Has some big shoes to fill. Yes, Ricky Game Ball, Coach Hunter.
Talk about some big shoes to fill. Amy, you've not been here quite near as long as I have on this campus. And when we hired Trev Falk to come in and be a part of night football, it didn't look like what you saw Friday night. And we probably had 35 or 40 players and just began to build a monster, if you will, over these years. And then after the state championship game, Trev decides he wants to step down. He wants to take some other interest in business. He wants to be more involved with his family. More importantly, he didn't want to be on campus every day, all day, which is kind of required to be the head coach of a football team. But nonetheless, he's still involved. Kids are still here, and he was at the Jamboree game a couple of weekends ago. And but anyway, Hunter Landry. When I talked with Trev as he resigned, I talked with him the next day. I said, "Is there anybody in-house we should consider?" He said, "There's one that I would hope that you would consider first, and that's Hunter Landry." And, of course, we have known Hunter Landry. Hunter Landry actually played high school sports. I remember watching him in Breaux Bridge. He was a quarterback for the football team. He was shortstop for the baseball team, and graduated in 2009. Thought he was going to go into education of some sort and was called back by Breaux Bridge to be a part of their coaching staff. Did that. Came to us as an assistant coach in 2019. It was actually Jawan's 8th grade year, and Jawan was kind of playing up for the high school team. And since 2021, he has served as the offensive coordinator at LCA. And in January of this year, as I mentioned, after Coach Falk stepped down, Hunter Landry elevated to the head coaching position. First year, first game versus Acadiana High. It couldn't be any more exciting than that. And here's one note. Now, we saw Reagan's interview with the coach after the game last week. We saw all of the fans. It was standing room only at Acadiana High Stadium. And after all the fans had left, after all the kids had pretty much got on the bus, and there was just a handful of people, I looked on the far side as we were tearing down our night vision equipment, and there's one person left on the night visitor bench in that whole section. The fans are gone. The coaches are gone. There's one guy, and I look, it's Coach Hunter Landry. You know what he's doing?
Picking up trash.
Picking up all of the tape, wrist tape and ankle tape and Gatorade bottles. And at that moment, I'm like, you know what? That is a class act, not only in the classroom and on the field, but behind the scenes.
And an example for your players and your program. It's very reminiscent to me of the great Louis Cook, who was the same exact way, that it didn't matter how great you were, it didn't matter how many championship rings were on your hand. The most important thing was to first be a good person, be a class act individual, and then from there that translates into how you play on the field. I always liked that, and it looks like Hunter Landry is cut out of that mold. Jay, I want to move forward just a little bit and take us into, after Friday night, of course, we moved into Saturday with college football. And, there's a lot of LCA alumni that are playing football at the next level. 22 LCA Knights on active college football rosters. That's incredible.
It was, and Saturday, Southeastern in Hammond played Mississippi State on the road, and Zach Clement, he was part of the first 2 state championships here at LCA. He got the start Saturday afternoon in Starksville, and Zach Clement threw his first Southeastern. Of course, he transferred from Northwestern State. He threw his first touchdown against an SEC opponent Saturday, so that was great. Now, like you said, 22 active LCA Knights on various rosters. Interesting note, Friday night, One of the LSU coaches, Coach Wilson, was on site at the Acadiana game, as well as all 5 of our current LCA Knights that are on the LSU roster. We're all at the game Friday night hanging out, and before they had to make the road trip on Saturday to play on Sunday. And so I thought that was really good. I want to give our alumni shout out of the week. It goes to Brylan Green of the Liberty Flames. Brylan had a great interception, one of about 3 interceptions made by the defensive backs of that game, and he helped the Flames to a 34-24 victory over Bowling Green.
You know, I told Brylan this back in the spring. He needs to take those initials and stop calling himself Brylan Green. He just needs to be Big Game.
Big game.
Big game.
Same
Brylan,
thing.
Big Game Green. There
All right,
we go.
talk about week 2. Talk about tomorrow night, Amy. What do we have?
All right, tomorrow night, LCA Woodlawn in Baton Rouge, 7 p.m. at Woodlawn High. If you're going to go to that game, here's the address. Plug it into your Waze, 15755 Jefferson Highway in Baton Rouge. Now, Woodlawn coming off a big loss to University Lab, but, you know, University Lab prompting the best linebacker in the country, not just the state of Louisiana, University with Keelan Moses. So certainly, without a doubt, that was a buzzsaw that they ran into. But we're going to be dealing with a chippy team with a chip on its shoulder.
Mad.
Absolutely. Nobody wants to do anything more than get a bad taste out of their mouth when you have a loss like that. Now, last year LCA defeated Woodlawn by the score of 33-12, but Night Train heads over tomorrow night, and they're looking to go to 2-0 and the first road win for Coach Landry.
KnightVisionTV will be live streaming for free. Remind you, there's a lot of little tags on all of our accounts where you're to subscribe to watch the live feed. That's all a scam. You pay $9 and get nothing but lose your $9. Do not subscribe to anything. Night Vision, Nightcast, it's all free. Thankful to all of our sponsors, so don't get scammed. Well, that concludes our very first edition of LCA Nightcast. Be sure to share, retweet, repost, subscribe, whatever it is you need to do on whatever platform you're watching this. Can't wait to see all of you in Baton Rouge tomorrow night. LCA taking on the Woodlawn Baton Rouge Panthers. Thanks to all of our production team, our camera crew, our stage hands, our director, and our co-host, my co-host, Amy Kane. Thank you, Amy. And we'll see you all next week, next Thursday night, episode 2.
Go Knights!